let's say for instance, like I've recorded like 120 podcasts. I have never actually heard that word. Someone saying I can't do something on my podcast. Now these guys are not geniuses. A lot of them are very ordinary. They come from ordinary backgrounds, but because they took small chances, they end up in positions that they're in. Similar enough to coming out of a relationship saying, "Oh, I could never see myself being that happy," or trying to get out myself into a certain position. It's all about framing. It's perspective on that, you know. So I think just eliminate that term you can't. Like I am like the ultimate sign of like someone who was like a dummy, and like my path could have been very, 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 very different. If say for instance, I took the blame for what happened to me with my injury and stuff like this, and said that, oh look, it's my fault, it's someone else's fault, whatever. But instead, I took responsibility and took action afterwards, and that paved the way then for my life to be in such a way that I feel like I can have a go at a lot of stuff and be someone who is quite ambitious at things.
Darren, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining me.
Excited for it, man. Excited for
Cheers.
it. Excited to it.
Good stuff. So I suppose we get straight into it now. We've known each other quite a while now, Darren, and I suppose up until the point where I actually got to know you, I don't know much about your life from before that. So I wanted to start off and get a little bit of a background from you kind of growing up in Ireland and stuff, because I've never actually spoke to you about that.
Good question, man. I know we've been kind of going back and forth from different aspects. Like I was on your podcast, you were on my podcast, and we are
Mm.
always going into certain segments, whether it's training or nutrition. But it's a good point though, and I think for a bit of backstory for anyone, I grew up in Cork originally, so I grew up small town, middle of nowhere in Cork, and I was kind of fortunate enough to get into a good school. So I was in a really good school called Christian Brothers College, and I went there to play sport. Oddly enough, so I am tick stupid, literally do not have a brain cell in my entire head growing up. And that was just kind of me. Like I was a sporty kid. I was a good runner. I was a good 100-meter runner. I was a good rugby player because I was fast. And that was kind of like what I wanted to do is I wanted to play sport. My brother was a little bit older. He was much more academic, much more of the good boy. And I suppose I was much more the opposite side of the spectrum. So I wanted to go and play rugby. That's what I wanted to do. And then when I went through school, that kind of path was kind of fulfilling to a degree. I was pretty decent, but I was also a good runner. So I did have like a good career in athletics as well, running 100-meter. And then it kind of came to the stage whereby I had to decide what I wanted to do. And I did want to pursue the rugby aspect because, how much Irish sprinters really get there? Not that many. So at around 17, 18, I went fully down the rugby channel. Now, again, probability says you're probably not going to make it, but a young guy, pretty ambitious, says, okay, let's do it. 1 week later, I blew up my kneecap, dislocated my knee, and tore my cruciate. And at that point, at 17 years old, my entire life just changed because I was not this flashy kind of kid who wanted to just pursue sport because sport seemed like a good idea. I now had sport pulled under me, under the rug of my feet. And to put things into context about how bad the injury was, I was rushed to like the hospital, and I went into the hospital. I got my knee put back into place. My knee was like dislocated. It was everywhere. It was like turned around my head. I was sitting on an emergency table, and the doctor came in afterwards, and he was trying to make like small talk. And he looked at me and he said, "How's the car?" And I was like, "Car?" I was like, "Oh, I was playing rugby. Sorry." He was like, "Oh, I thought you were in a car crash. Your knee was so fucked
Gee,
up." So at
Jesus.
that point, the question came like, could I ever run again? Would I be able to do anything like that? And then I kind of bounced back pretty quickly and was actually back on the field in 6 months. So usually it would take like 18, and I was just like, screw this, went back to the rehab straight away and was back out playing in 6 months. But I knew straight away that it was gone. Like I wasn't able to do anything that I ever wish I wanted to achieve. Not saying I'd ever get there, but I didn't have a choice. So now at 17, I'm this like, dumbass kid who is failing school, who pretty much doesn't have much of a future ahead of him. The possibility of me getting into a university at that stage was very slim, and I was in fifth year in school. So my good mate Tom, which you know well as well, we were both speaking one day, and his older brother, okay, he worked in the medicine department. He was actually a doctor, and he was like, "Oh, there's like a library up here that you can study in." Okay, there's like a library here, and I thought to myself that if I just applied the logic that I had applied for towards sport my entire life into an academic field, what could happen? So I pretty much devoted 2 years of my entire life to sitting in one library and studying everything I possibly could. So this dumbass kid who, bear in mind, basically failed his junior cert at this point, just put every single thing, and I mean, I had turned green. Bear in mind, I'd been spent so long in this library that I ended up getting myself into a university and doing a good degree as a result. And there was so much like torture and pain during that process because there's relinquishing my past and moving on to my future. And then on that path, then I think I just got that love for like progress. And of course, you can get into more detail on kind of where I went from there. But I think that's the real catalyst that probably not many people know, actually, to be honest, at this stage.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. And, it's mad to hear kind of going from such a switch of kind of, being sporty and then just turning over completely into academics. Like it's very rare you'd hear of that. What did you actually study in college?
So I went on to study business information systems, which how I described it as is like half computer engineering and then half business. But like I'm not a very technical individual. I'd be much more on the business side of things. Like I think in terms of money and to be honest, profit most of the time. So my head was always geared towards building an online business, building an app, building a startup. That's just where I was kind of lying. But
Mm,
understanding the back end side of things, which I know isn't a real discussion for today, but understanding a technical level was something I wanted to explore. But I quickly
mm,
realized though that like education is not part of the whole deal. Like again, I went through the process of trying to get really prestigious internships and whatnot. I didn't get any of those, man. Didn't get one of them. I remember going to like a networking conference at like 20 years old, and the guys didn't even want to know me at that stage. And it was for these big investment firms that I wouldn't even go to now at this stage, to be honest.
mm,
But at that stage, at that age, people don't even want to know you. So I think I quickly learned that okay, education is important to a degree, but again, it doesn't determine an individual. And it really hit me when I moved to London. So at 21, I was working a competitive internship in London, and the internship wasn't even that great. I had met some good people, but what it made me think about was what I could actually achieve if I was to go balls to the wall with something, whether I pick up sport, the gym, career, a startup, anything. I just knew that looking at other people that these guys or girls were not particularly the smartest, the brightest, the fittest, the healthiest, but they were awfully good at going really deep on something and just pursuing that aspect. And I always compare that to, other individuals who are very talented and they never really keep it up. I think that's the curse of granted knowledge is I think that I'm pretty secure here, I'm pretty happy here. Whereas for me, I think I've always been the stupid kid, the kid that we're not the biggest, not the brightest, and then I was able to kind of push a lot harder as a result. And for me, the reward I've even gotten has not even been quantifiable to the amount of work that I've put in, is how I would describe it from an academic perspective, education, career aspect.
And how did you like from a situation like that? Like, how did you have such belief in yourself, kind of jumping from, say, one thing? Obviously, you said you were going applying your work ethic from sports into putting it into something, but without having that kind of background and stuff, I'd say you probably felt very out of your depth when that first happened. Did you?
Definitely, and to this day, man,
Mm,
I do. Like, no matter what I'm doing in my career, like I'm working with Revolut at the moment, and it's very technical. It's very challenging at times, and every day I feel like a massive imposter. Like that's just the
mm,
reality of what we're doing. But I think how you move that across from that is understanding that we are just solving a series of miniature problems continuously, and what we're trying to solve is generally quite similar from problem to problem, but just its small particulars deviate. So let's say in a fitness sense, if we're trying to get healthier, if we're trying to lose fat, if we're trying to get in really good shape, it is challenging, of course, but we're trying to solve small things along the way. So I was able to apply that very much towards an academic sense and much more towards my career as well. Like there was a reason why I wasn't getting interviews. What was the reason
mm,
why? Something to do with my CV, something to do with this, whatever. If I just sat there, worked really hard, and it spoke to enough people, got enough reference, I knew I could solve those problems. So I think you encounter different various levels of difficulty for sure, of course, but the natural instinct of someone being able to solve continuous problems is undoubtedly the strongest skill to have, because then you can show yourself in any domain, online business, creating an online business, creating it around your fitness and around your brand and everything, and be able to pursue it and go very deep on it and never feel that you're technically going to be on your own at the end of it. It's going to be very fruitful at the end of it because you're able to do it over a long enough period.
mm. And where did you learn this from? Was this kind of self-taught, or have you picked this up from kind of others over the years?
I think there's a lot of trial and error, man. Like, honest to God, like, so
Yeah.
I'd have a lot of mentors, like, and I think I've created a world for myself whereby I'm just surrounded by people that are generally better than me. You know, that's the way I can look at things. That whether it's my own business at the moment or whether it's my own career, I'm usually the stupidest person there, and I'm usually the person that's being dragged along, which is a great position to be in. I'm very fortunate to be in that position. But ever since I was young, that's where I wanted to get myself into. So we go back to the earlier scenario whereby I wanted to get internships. So
Mm.
everyone's there, and it's probability at the end of the day. Like, there's 100 people there trying to get 2 roles. I thought to myself, well, this is a fleeting process. Like, we're always going to end up last, right? Because survival of the fittest, it's competition. Like, everything's competition today, right? So what can I do that's slightly different? So that's why I started to kind of look upwards. And you spoke with this in my podcast too, that everyone wants to look up and speak up. Well, for me, like, I have nothing to lose. This is the way I look at it. When I reach out to people online, and this is how I built the podcast and everything, I have zero to lose a lot of the time. If you don't respond to me, I'm in the exact same position. So I was able to kind of just gravitate towards these people. And I think for anyone that's listening, that's like wanting change in their life, a lot of people do take people in under their wing, and they do admire someone who's the underdog and who's willing to learn and who is willing to be the fool. And it's a very good point that Jordan Peterson made in Cain and Abel. So Jordan Peterson makes lots of religious references, and he was saying that to be a master, you must be a fool, and you can only be a master by being the fool for long enough. And everybody looks at the fool and thinks that, oh, they're not going to get better or whatever. But it's those people that thereafter become the master. So I just apply that very much principle to whatever I want to do. And to be honest, I've been left made look like a fool several times. When I started my podcast, it was a shit show. Had no video, all over the place. When I started a lot of my businesses, like my first business went to absolute trash. To be honest, at the end of it, like we were making a lot of money at the time, and then it blew up on me pretty much. So I've always kind of had that scrappy approach, because I feel like that for anyone that's listening, when you're looking at other people, they think that they have to figure it out, but for the most part, they are more in a screwed up position than you are, or else they have to solve a lot of issues you have. So you can use that as leverage and use it to your advantage. Is how I kind of apply these principles.
Yeah, very good. And like I think that what you're saying there, with a lot of people say from Ireland, in from these kind of small towns, find it hard to believe that, like, oh, I could go and do that, because you only really see the end result. You don't really, like, there's not really a lot going on around where, you can watch people kind of come up through the ranks and go through it. For most people, it's just going to be, you see someone on Instagram or social media, and like they're already kind of after being through it. But what would you say kind of to people who are in that situation, kind of say looking at you, who have maybe want to go down into the kind of the route of business or podcasting or stuff or something like that, but it's just kind of like,
Mhm.
oh, I could never go and do that.
I always think start small. So, for instance, like I write every day. I'm dyslexic. I'm not a good writer, but I write every single day. And I started writing like a year and a half ago. I knew I was really shit at writing, and I knew it was never going to be something that was very, very good in the beginning. But I just started really, really small, and I started putting out content like every single day. And then I realized then that, okay, this is how I kind of grow. This is how I get better. And I started reflecting on what was working, and I started doing it better as a result. So if you are looking to put yourself out there or try something different, you always should start small, because as your point, like when you look at the top dog, like, oh, of course that's kind of how it should be done. But people forget the gap in between. There's zero down here and there's 100 up here. So let's say in a fitness sense, Rob Lipsitz probably the gold standard of Irish online fitness marketing. He has the best marketing, right? Which is why he's so successful. That's up at 100. Everybody thinks that you need to go from 0 to 100, whereas you should be looking to go from 0 to 1. And when you go from 0 to 1, that makes yourself a lot better in terms of how you think about it, how you articulate your thoughts, and where you want to situate yourself. So for me, I think that's very, very clear, because then you were always the student, and you don't feel like that you need to get there anytime soon. And I think that's why having even like a job in the beginning is a great way to leverage what you might want to do, because you might want to pursue something that may not work out in the future. But the goal is always not to be perfect. The goal is to get better. Okay. So when you have that principle in mind, it's a great overarching thought. The second point I would say is about fundamentally not caring as much about what other people think about you. The reason why is because we have this, I think it's called the mirror effect or the sunlight effect, some sort of effect anyway, that we think we are much more important than what we are. I think I fucked up that reference. Whereas the reality is that like nobody is looking at us, okay? We
Mm.
think that some people are, and maybe they are, okay? But to your point, we were chatting about Joe Rogan earlier and about you showing up in his show. If a 42-year-old brokey from fucking Colchester looks at that and thinks, "Oh, dumbass, who cares? Like, why does
Mm.
his opinion actually care?" Whereas if it was me that looked at it, which I did text you, and I said, "I think it's great marketing. I think it's really good for your position and your brand. I think it suits you really nicely." That's constructive feedback. So I think we attach ourselves to the small minority of poor feedback, or we anticipate that that's what we're going to get. I have absolutely um no doubt that when I started my podcast, people were saying like it's terrible, whatever, whatever. But I just stuck with it. And the beginning is always the most terrifying. And I remember when I started my show, I was in an apartment in Dublin at the time, and I was hovering over like the publish button, and I remember like looking at my phone, like shitting my pants, and often sharing a lot of the thoughts that I've even been teaching you over the years. And when I was looking at that, and I look back in hindsight, it wasn't because the content was bad. It wasn't because what I was doing was bad. Like what I'm doing is ultimately helping other people make more money and live a more fulfilling life. And when I was what I was more concerned about was what does my high school friends think about me in this particular
Mm.
instance, which is absolute bullshit considering I don't interact with the majority of them because one, I can't, and two, they're doing different things with their life, right? So that's why all of those pretenses that we establish are largely they're not validated anymore. So we vastly undermine our ability and we vastly undermine how much we can help other people, and therefore we lack the desire and we lack the initiative to go and capitalize on a lot of our thoughts we have. Now when I have an idea or now when I have a thought, I just throw shit at the board until something sticks. I've launched businesses that as I mentioned have done really well. I've launched other businesses that have done really poorly. It's only through a process of actually getting up and getting out there that I've been able to do anything. So that's my main kind of initiative. And I've seen a lot of people, like even close people to myself, run into massive, massive issues getting off the ground. And I can't tell you how much like that will hold you back in life, because maybe it's a business at 21 years old when you have zero risk, but at 30 years old, it could be a job that you hate that you're running from, or at 40 years old, it could be a relationship that you're running from. So it's taking ownership and responsibility for your life, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to go back there about you mentioned about like most people will only care about kind of what other people are going to think of them. Like, why do you think that, like, say, young people in kind of small towns and stuff seek that approval from people around them who they don't even care about so much? Like, yeah.
Insecurity, 100%. Everything comes
Mm.
back to insecurity. So people who are not confident in their own ability will be generally insecure. So especially in the online sense, because let's say for guys 21 years old, what do they want to do? They want to get girls, want to make a bit of money. What do they usually have? No girls, they're usually broke, right? So 21 years old is a very important apex for a lot of younger people, even when you get a bit older, because it's the basis of how you're going to live your life is through your 20s. So in those small towns, and this is why I recommend for everybody to get yourself out there into the biggest city that possible. It's one of my core like tenets, if you will, is social environment. Okay, and how you perceive how your social environment is set up will determine a lot of things. Same with location, but I'm going to put them in together. So social environment is who you hang out with, who you surround yourself with, as I mentioned, is hugely important. Now, I will give you good and bad examples. If you hang around with a lot of broke people who go to the pub at the weekend, you will 100% end up broke and be at the pub at the weekend. It can lead into all different aspects of life, and you'll go down that path, right? 100%. I'm not saying you need to give up alcohol. I'm saying that you need to surround yourself and be with people who are actual winners. There's a clear distinction between winners and losers in life. I don't give a shit what anyone says. We
Mm.
use metrics like money, revenue, financials, girls, cars, whatever. We use metrics to determine how we want to see it in the world, but there's clear differences. That social environment is very, very important. The more you have these winners in your circle, the less you give a shit about the losers. That's kind of the way it happens, right?
Mm.
Same in small towns. Because nothing happens, therefore this is like the talk of the town, right? I ring my parents every once in a while And like I would literally be like, what are you up to? They're like, nothing. We're doing nothing. I'm like, I know you're doing nothing. And like
Mm.
they're old, like that's chill. They can chill out. But that's representative of everybody else as well. Okay. So
Yeah.
that's why when you move yourself, even if you're in Ireland, get yourself into Dublin. I know people say like, oh, like whatever, whatever, but just get yourself up there, meet people, explore. Like what I loved about when I was living in Dublin was the fact that there was so much multinationals. Like a lot of my friends were like Brazilian. There were people from all around the world, which was really good. That gives you a good basis to kind of slowly detach from that mindset. That's how I would recommend it, is slowly detach from it. I would therefore go a step further and say move to a bigger city again. Generally, the bigger city that you're in, the less people will generally care. And I give you an analogy that people might understand. If you walk down the street in New York, nobody is like looking at you. They're all in their own world. To be honest, if you look at them, they look at you sideways because they don't want you to look at
Mm.
you. That's the way it is because 16 million people or whatever the number is in that city, they don't give a shit. Same in Singapore. So my environment design is designed like that. When I moved here, everybody here are trying to do ambitious stuff. So the more you have going on around you, the less you care about what people will say or what or do whatever, and then instead you can just get on with what matters. Because when you retrospectively look back on this, you're going to look back on because I look back on my week. Let's say, where did I spend my time? Did I spend my time in the DMs on Instagram or on a ghost account on Twitter, talking shit to people, or did I spend the week working on the goals that I wanted to set out and achieve? And that's a huge, huge influence on how you're going to succeed over the longer term. Because we're not thinking in terms of years; we're thinking in terms of decades. So when
Mm.
you plan for a decade and you plan like to build a career or business around a decade, the day to day seems a lot different. You know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And to bring it back then, so we went off on a little tangent there. One thing I did want to kind of talk to you
Of
about
course, bro.
was the how you went from, say, where your training life went after you got to college, because you said obviously you took off academically, but I know now you're very big into training and stuff now. So how did you come to
Mhm.
this point?
I think when I fucked my knee really badly, I couldn't do anything but train. So I think it was like 4 days later, I was in the gym with a full cast on my leg. I wasn't even on a cast, man. I was on this machine that looked like Forrest Gump. It was like 10-degree flexion, so I could only ever move my leg like 10-degree. And I
Okay.
was I was in the gym bench pressing like 4 days later. So I think I guess developed that love for it then as a result. And I think even myself, my best mate Tom, we were always dying to go fully balls deep into fitness. That was the goal. Was like, okay, so we were in 6th year, and it was quite difficult to get trainings in because you're studying and you don't really like own cars and shit. It's a bit
Mm.
awkward. But then we went to university. We were in the same degree. We were on the same campus. We were in the same house. We just trained 5, 6 days a week, every single time. Like I would go on nights out and I would just go to gym afterwards the next morning because I just loved it and I loved the
Mm.
progress from it. I think at the time as well, I was much bigger than I've been the last couple of years. I think I'm probably the biggest I've been now, right now, for the last couple of years, but definitely in university I was much bigger. So there was the education element. I was learning about training, I was learning about nutrition, I was learning about calories, I was learning about how to count macros and everything. And then I had like the online influences. So this was like the early days of like Joe Delaney, all like the boys, like the I Beat the Boys. And I suppose that's what I was even aspiring to at the time, was the fitness level of that, whereby you can be fit, healthy, travel, do really good in life. And I think they were great, like poster boys, to be honest, because they paved the
Mm.
way for the new era of bodybuilding, which was not super size. It was fit, lean, men's physique, beach look, always shredded. And that was kind of my goal for the last couple of years. And this year now I'm trying to take it up a step again. But when I was in university, it was just so easy to me because I only had 6 hours of university or whatever. And when everybody else was in clubs Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, I was just training. Like I
Mm.
didn't want to be in clubs. Like if I wanted to get with someone, if I wanted to go dating, if I wanted to go on whatever, I could still go and do that. Like it's not like I cut that out of my life, but I was just able to focus completely on myself. And at that stage, man, I wasn't even focusing on, personal development as it's termed now. It was just how can I position my body and mind in such a way where I can get the most out of university, the most out of life, and set myself up for success.
And what is your main reason behind training at the moment? Is it for enjoyment or is it for productivity? Do you have plans in the future?
Good question. I think so right now I'm training with Darren McNamara, and the reason why I went with him is because I think he understood two things. I think me and him are very similar. So we both have a very similar like perspective on like the all-in approach or committing to something. So that was the first thing. The second thing is I felt like he understood my scenario between working, training, traveling really, really well. And what I wanted to do was I felt the last couple of years my physique was it was really good, but it was kind of decreasing in muscle size because I was always on a beach, I was always traveling, that I was never really making huge progress. But I looked good, right? So you look good
Mm,
in photos, that's the main thing. And I was healthy. But I feel like when I got to Singapore, I was kind of like, I want to see how hard I can push, but I want to do it under the guidance of a coach. So
mm,
he really changed the entire the script for me. He was able to unlock a whole new area of training that I had no idea about beforehand. Tension, like time under tension, resistance, like how to do it properly, like really do it properly. And he's a master, man. He was really a master for me. So that helped me, I think, move ahead again. I think I put on
mm,
10 kilos in like 3 months, or not 3 months, 4 months, 4 months, 5 months. So that's the aspect. And I think for productivity, it does help when you're on like 3,800 calories a day. I would say that. Now, I do get a few slumps here and there. But
mm,
the goal, I think, with this as well, is just to seek kind of top tier excellence and not excellence in the eyes of someone else, just in terms of yourself. I
yeah.
felt like that sometimes when you don't have a coach, you can kind of just like piss in the wind a small bit. I think I was like either not getting in the last meal or not training as hard or just subconscious, small little subconscious things. So I really like the experience of training with someone properly full time. Like, with Dara is always full on, which is really good.
Mm, yeah.
And there's a huge benefit, even if you don't want to compete, just to have a coach with you 24/7. Well, not 24/7, but as much as possible.
Yeah. Um, it's really refreshing to hear that, because I think a lot of people now kind of get sucked into the idea of, if you have a coach and you start training, you go like, you go hard at it for a little while, that you're expected to compete at the end of it, when it's not the case at all.
Mhm.
Um,
It
would you ever
depends what
do
you
like,
want to do, though, isn't it? It
yeah, it
depends
really
what the
depends.
goal is. So
Yeah.
like that idea does go around in my head every once in a while. I would say that, but I feel like that where I'm at currently, just like career wise, business wise, with my podcast and stuff, adding in something like that, well, it's twofold. One, I don't think that I have a top tier world physique to compete, so I feel like I would need to do something like what Dara has done, which is spend 2 years locked away in a cell to put on the size that he's done, and like the dude has literally transformed his entire physique. I feel like that is required, number one. So if one, that's 2 year endeavor, which again, this is not my career. Second thing then is the trade off, the opportunity cost. So
Mm,
with a lot of things in life, I always give the analogy of a jar. If you can picture a jar, right? For the most part, people's jars are 70% full. Okay. They think that they're busier than what they are. They're not really. They could add in a lot more. I would say that actually 40%. Actually, I would say about 40%. Okay. For me, I definitely feel like I'm pushing very, very, very hard, especially in recent months. So if you're gonna add something in, you do need to take something out. If you don't take something out, you're gonna get burnt out. Pretty simple.
mm,
So I've pushed a needle before. I've got to the stage whereby I'm at 100% and of output, and I'm miserable, exhausted, overtired, all that kind of good stuff. So if I was to do something like that, I would need to move something out. Whereas for me, like the goal has been to build a very successful podcast, one that helps younger people live richer and happier lives, and to build a strong career and my business around it. So it's kind of like at 26, it's like where is my skill and where am I best situated? I don't necessarily think that means being on a stage, but you never know how the future could change. I'm at 80 and a half kilos now at the moment. Maybe
mm.
at men physique at someone who's 5'6", maybe I don't need to be much bigger, but that is a different caliber. Like, and you would know yourself from coaching, from competing. There's something strange that happens when you go from being a part-time bodybuilder, as Dara describes it, to being a
Mm.
competitor. The second you sign on that dotted line, your whole life changes, because it's not about you anymore. It's actually about other people to a degree, because you're competing against them. So it's like, am I doing the very, very most I can to compete with someone else? Whereas right now, I just want to get the best physique I possibly can, which is probably better than most people anyway, in general, not competitors. I just mean just general
Mm.
people. So the competition at the moment is with myself, but when you sign on the dotted line, it becomes against other people, which I don't think
Yeah.
that's a competition that I want to be in right now.
Yeah, no, that's very fair. And like, I suppose just to come back, you were mentioning about you're very busy and you have the podcast and the businesses and all this kind of stuff. I suppose from my end of it, as an online coach, a big part of that is training and revolving your life around training and around eating and all that. And that's kind of one of the perks of our job. But I think it can become very easy to become disconnected from, say, just people who aren't looking at doing this as a career, like people like yourself who
Mhm.
are looking at, who just like getting in good shape, staying in good shape. So when obviously you have priorities that lie elsewhere, what are some things that you do to kind of keep keep everything so that your training doesn't get just slacked to the side, like?
Great, it's a great question, man, and it's a huge area in product prioritization. So I think there's a very good way to do this, right? So there's actually a model, but I won't explain the model. I'm not too nerdy for the model. The model goes something like this: is that when your day starts, you always want to target what's highest priority and highest impact. So what's high impact, high priority. So let's say if it's training, you'd want to position that. For me, I position at the start of the day, because I know that I can get that out of the way early in the day, and then everything else then I can take care of afterwards. So for me, I always take care of my training early. I'm training 5 days a week at the moment now, and I swim once a week. Sorry, once a week. So I have 2 rest days essentially,
Mhm.
and with that, it's perfect. So I'm training harder, training a little bit longer for 70 minutes, which I don't really mind, and I get that out of the way early on. Now, training is only one part of the equation, of course. So the other aspect is my low intensity cardio. So when I'm trying to aim for about 12,000 steps a day. My gym is about 3 kilometers away, so I walk there, walk back, 6,000 steps, happy days. Then for the rest of it, bring my dog for a walk, go for a walk with my girlfriend, take things kind of chill. So I'm always getting in that 10 to 12,000 step range. So it's pretty good lifestyle, pretty good health. Then my meals, I'm having 6 meals a day, so including my pre-workout. So I'm just trying to position in such a way that it's around my bigger work items. So pre-workout meal, whatever, post-workout meal is quite big. So I do that early in the morning, and then I'm easing into my work at that point. So I'll work on my podcast for a bit. I'll get all the heavier items, like get all the bigger shit out of the way early. Then when I kind of finish, and I can have like a bigger meal. So like that is 500 grams of rice, 300 grams of chicken. Like I usually have that in one go, because I'm too like I can't be eating 6 meals a day. I just don't have time for it.
Mm.
And then I'm into my calls in the evening. I always take calls all the way up to, we have calls at 2 o'clock in the morning some nights. So that's why I do my calls late at night, because during the day it's deep, deep focus. So I think the lessons for anyone on this is like, do what you can to set yourself up for success early on. Get a big win in. Training in the morning such a huge win for people. Get your steps in the morning. Get some natural sunlight. Get some water in the morning, and then set yourself up so that all the other stuff just happens. Just gets out of the way. You get it done. So as a result, so I think that's been a very good cornerstone for me, and I think genuinely I've actually never missed a training when I'm at home, because I don't I don't need to. I had a podcast last Friday night with a guy, and we were kind of discussing, saying that like when you fall into this rhythm, so it's a real big habit you're building, and we're trying to look for habits here, right? If you can do it for 60 days, 90 days, it almost feels weirder if you don't do it than you do it. Okay, so if you miss it, so I'll give you a good example. I started training a few years ago, all right, a few months ago. So I work in trading, by the way. I didn't make this up in my head, and I've a lot of friends that are traders, and I wanted to learn for years. So I have a coach who's like a trading coach, and I put my head really into it. It is incredibly technical, and it is incredibly difficult, and it is incredibly long of a process. But my approach to this was a 30 by 30 rule, which I learned from Sahel Bloom, which is do something that you want to do, that you really want to do. I wanted to learn this, right? Do it for 30 minutes a day, every day for 30 days. At the end of that period, you will be able to determine if you want to do it or not. So if it is a bit of exercise, if it's something different, something new, because you've done a 30 by 30, which I don't even know what that is, it's like 900 or something, um, you've developed enough skill and enough habit to keep it up. So now, if I don't do it one day, and I only train for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes a day, it's very light. If I don't do it, I'm like, fuck, felt strange not doing it today. And I
Mm.
enjoy doing it. And I enjoy doing it. So I apply that principle to health, fitness, food, everything. If I went out, which I probably will, my girlfriend's mom is flying into Singapore soon. We'll go for a meal. It will actually feel quite weird to eat a meal, to be honest, because I don't eat off plan, because I just focus on my meal plans and just target down that avenue, if that makes sense.
Mm. Yeah, no. And obviously, like from talking to you, I know this, but like I know you're a very structured person. I know you're a very routine person. What has been? Do you ever feel like that you've missed out on stuff because of this? Like, say, social aspects, or going out,
Mm.
going off, spending time with the lads. Do you ever feel like that you would have liked to go a different way with it, or are you happy?
That's a fucking sick question, man. I actually really enjoy these questions. You're a really good interviewer. So that's a good point. I think that I lived a lot and I live a lot really quickly. That's the way I think about it. So when I was younger, I was doing a lot of people that most people couldn't do. So I was making a lot of money when I was really young. Okay. So I was always working. I was always pushing myself really hard. Myself and my mates, my close mates really wanted to set us up for success. So, when people got into the party scene at 24, 25, I was kind of in it at 20. And I wasn't just in it in like stupid nightclubs. I was traveling all over Europe at 20 years old. I was traveling all across Asia at 21. I did every hostel in Asia, every hostel in Europe. I'd been at all the major festivals, and I've been to Ibiza about 101 different times. So when I think about those things, and right now, if I don't go off and do them, I don't have like FOMO because I've been there and done it. So
Mm.
if anything, I actually feel bad for people sometimes who get into it late, who get into the party scene late. And then I think with my core group of friends as well, they're all pretty like on it. So I set myself up in that certain way. So due to the fact that I wanted to move like away from Ireland, was one of this kind of cornerstones, was that I felt like a lot of the time our actions are dictated by groupthink. So when we're around people, when we're around an atmosphere, when we're around like even like a location, we end up doing these things that we don't necessarily want to do. Whereas when I came out to Asia, I was able to really think for myself. So and that's why this is a great question, because of course, like, I'm really into music. I've loved music like for years. Okay, I really love house music, really love techno, really love the production of music, and I really love to follow music. Okay, so when I got to Singapore, there is a big house and techno scene here. And I remember in the beginning, I was like really up for going out and I really wanted to go out. But I always just looked at it as a trade off. It was like, all right, I can finish workout at midnight and I can be in a club till 6 a.m. But like, what do I really get from it? Like, you know what I mean? As in, like,
Mm.
it's not gonna make or break me, let's say. So I was at odds for a long time because I was always like such a partier and I was always like traveling, and I was the dude with a speaker, okay?
Yeah.
And then what happened was I realized that what I really wanted to do was just kind of do what everyone else was doing, which involved drinking. And then I looked at myself and I was like, well, I'm not a dummy who just follows other people. And I tried to lead a life of passion, purpose, and fulfillment that I determine on my terms. So why am I doing what everybody else is doing? And that was a big cornerstone for me. So that's when I actually decided to stop drinking. So it's been 6 months now since I stopped drinking. And I don't say that with a sense of superiority. Like, the last time I drank was in Ibiza, like, bear in mind. So it's not like I
Mm.
stopped drinking fucking and I was a monk. But because of that, I think I've just got way more clarity, and I'm just not feeling like fear of missing out or anything, because if anything, I live a much more relaxed life. I am
Mm.
relaxed to a degree. I'm very busy, but I mean, I'm not anxious. I'm not hungover. I'm not grumpy. I have a good relationship with food. I have a good relationship with training, and a very good relationship with my girlfriend that I live with. So I do feel like that sometimes this hedonistic path to get the most out of a night out or get the most out of a social setting can actually set you up for failure.
Do you think that if you weren't with Elise, that you would feel the same? like of about not having that fear of missing out?
That's even a better question. I think a girlfriend gives you perspective, and I think
Mm,
like a good like for any guy, like I think getting a good girlfriend gives you good perspective, and it works the both ways. If you're a female, you get a good man, whatever, and I think they should complement each other one to one. I think that with Elise, I realized that I don't necessarily need the stuff that I've always like been like searching for and trying to have like an endless kind of path of trying to get the most pleasure out of situations. Um, she understands my situation a lot of times, like how hard I work or how focused I am on a certain topic, whatever, and we bounce really well off each other. And I think our interest, the intersection, are travel and actual freedom. So that's the two cornerstones to a lot of our relationships, to be honest, is that we both love to travel and we both to live life mainly on our own terms. And that's of course difficult to aspire to. But I feel having the right partner sets you up for success. Whereas like I know people in fucking horrific relationships, man, that they pull them back and fall them down a lot. And there was even a really good point. I was just on a podcast last night as well, how like to be honest, like a partner could pull you back from doing things you want to do. I don't even mean just going out with the lads. I mean starting a business, leaving a job,
mm,
whatever. Because you have to think, you have to look at the conventional path and try work against it. That's my goal in life: is look at conventional wisdom, mortgage, house, baby, bullshit job, and not do that, because that game is literally gamified 100%. That is gamified. So for me, that's why, having a very, very strong girlfriend, essentially, that's how I put it, that we complement each other. Like we've been together for years, man. We never, ever, ever have any like issues and shit like this. There's no like jealousy and envy and all that kind of shit that goes around in relationships,
yeah.
which is wild, isn't it? That's like a wild concept. How is that?
Yeah.
Why is that normal?
And so, being in your position and looking from the outside in, what do you think are some things that people could do to set themselves up in a relationship like this?
Expectation. Have a real expectation of like what you really want. Like I'll go back to the drinking element, like as in
Mm,
people will try to position themselves as an authority, or they will position themselves as like status. So you'll often find like a guy that will over talk to themselves a lot to impress girls or whatever, and then the girl will have that expectation, and then vice versa. Then the guy will think that this girl is of this status, and then it leads to this paradox whereby none of them live up to the expectation. And then I think there's an element of comfort as well. So people, this is why the small town mentality is absolute bullshit, right? Because like it's actually funny, man. Like when I look back on like the people that were in, let's say, not my social circle, like not at all, but I mean like in the circumference of like the city that I lived, like the majority of them are still there, right? And this is the worst part. The popular girls were dating the popular guys, and then the popular guys were dating the popular girls, and then the loser girls are dating the loser boys, whatever. That is still going on, but they've just changed roles. They've genuinely just changed roles. Like some of the losers are getting with the winners, some of the losers are getting with other losers, right? So what that just means is that they've just kind of moved and shifted, right?
mm,
They're not actually progressing in any way as a result. And if you go back there, it's like a game of like, I don't know, they're like dotting off the names. They're just moving around. Ex-boyfriends and now new boyfriends, whatever, right? So it's a horrific process. And they're not
mm,
determining that success, right? And also, like, I think a lot of people who are like seeking to be in a relationship don't even want to be in a relationship. They're just lonely, and I find that huge in the business world as well. Like I see I see like people have co-founders and they don't even need a co-founder, they're just lonely, and it's the
mm,
same in the business sense, same in the relationship sense. Um like I would never say that I was ever like particularly lonely, but I feel like for me that I was just like I was the single dude in Ibiza, you know what I mean? Like I was that guy for a long time and I was just like there comes a point whereby you've been in the shitty rundown apartment at 5 o'clock in the morning a bit too often, and you're like, all right, it's time to try something else.
mm,
So people look inward. They look what's the lowest hanging fruit, which is someone in their hometown. But I can tell you that like even myself and Elise, the first couple of years, like it was long distance. She's
mm,
based in the US. I was based in Ireland, and we figured things out because we wanted to figure them out. People aren't willing to work hard enough for things that they want, career wise, relationship wise. They expect it to happen instantly, and therefore they get poor results. We went back to this in the beginning, you know, poor life, poor results. That's
Yeah.
what it always goes back to.
It's funny you said that about, like, you know, not actually wanting to be with someone. You know, people are just lonely. I feel like that's something that I kind of had to put myself through there over the last couple of months, because, you know, I think a lot of people, especially in these small towns, when, like, and it is, to be fair, like, you know, when you are in a small town and there's not much to do, it can be quite hard to spend time on your own and get comfortable kind of like being on your own. So people are kind of, you know, coming out of a relationship and then feeling lonely, and then kind of, as you said, grabbing onto the low hanging fruit and just kind of accepting whatever. And it's just how this cycle of kind of toxic relationships just kind of keeps itself going, because you're
Yeah.
grabbing onto someone for the wrong reasons, and you're like, it's just literally people grabbing someone and then relying on them purely for happiness, for, like, you know, motivation, for company, for everything.
Yeah, man.
And
If your happiness determines on someone else, you're fucked, right? So
yeah.
that's just the way it is. If you overly rely on someone, you're absolutely screwed, right? Now that's not
Mm,
to say that you shouldn't be really close with someone, of course. And you should be very like connected and you should have that relationship, of course. But if your sole reason for your happiness is based on someone else liking you or someone else's opinion of you, you are very screwed, right? And you're screwed over the longer period. Now, that's the more extreme version. Of course, I'm just going to cut it as it is, but there's steps you can do in the process. So, like for people who are struggling, I would just try to have the detachment. You know, cut yourself loose. And to be honest, it's some of the easier shit. Like, as in, I say it as jokingly, but I'm being serious. Like, if you're coming out of a relationship or you're struggling, get jacked as fuck. Get as big as you can. Get in really good shape, right? Follow all like the guys that inspire you and motivate you, and take a bit more risk, like what you're doing about moving to Bali soon. Like just get up and fucking go. Like fuck that. Like who cares really at the end of the day? If you're just leaving it behind, you may as well just get up and move on, right? So get jacked, move somewhere nice, move somewhere sunny, get into a big city and try something else. Actually, environmental wise, career wise, financially in the right position. And you'd often find that people that want to move towards that model are the people that are most successful, man. To be honest, like you
mm,
know, they bounce back. Like whatever Jeff Bezos had a failed marriage, I have absolutely no doubt in him bouncing back. He is jacked as fuck. He already made it, but he's gonna come back and do something else, you know. So it's not all doom and gloom. That's what I always think.
yeah. It's when you're it's easier said than done when you're in that position, though, because it is like, even though you might know that, say, going doing a certain thing is going to kind of bring you out of your comfort zone a little bit, but when you're feeling vulnerable and you're in a kind of position like that,
Yeah.
all you want is comfort, and you want what's like familiar to you, which is why I feel like so many people retreat backwards. You know, it definitely took me a, a while to kind of come to terms with it. Even though I knew that, like, you know, certain things are going to be better for you and you need to move a certain direction, it can be
Hmm.
hard to kind of to just go off and do it.
Definitely, man. I think as well though, like yeah, and I'm not oversimplifying it for sure. Like I know how difficult these things can be, but what you do need is like a goal to work towards because you feel like bad about yourself, okay? And then
Mm,
you need to get like a success, a couple of quick wins. That's kind of the way I can describe it. And I always say this in a work sense as well, is that like, you know, we're going for small miniature wins. We're not going for like these huge accomplishments. We're not climbing Everest or doing a marathon. We want to get small accomplishments because I think a good thing, a big thing about relationships is about like our self-worth, like how we determine ourselves. So we determine ourselves often in a relationship by how the other person treats us.
mm,
So which is why you see girls who have huge confidence issues when they're with an absolute dickhead, and a dickhead is like being a prick to her and all this, right? And then they come out of that. For a girl, it's great then to be working on something that they're very passionate towards, getting really fit, getting healthy, feeling good about themselves, feeling good about how they look, and then they're working towards their new self. Now, is that easy? Absolutely not. Is that necessary? Definitely, because I feel like if you don't, you're going to go down a very negative spiral. Like I feel like when Andrew Tate went under so much issue was when people were when he was saying that, oh, like, depression doesn't exist, which of course, whatever, like there's like a scientific term for it. That's not what I'm arguing here. What I'm saying is that his point on this was that you can be in a depressed state but take action on it and get
Mm,
up, move forward, get some quick wins. And I think that's the point that he was making, which I agree with, is the fact that we can only deal with the current situation we're in, and if you get burnt, you need to come back. So if you lose your job, uh, talking to anyone that's listening, like you don't sit there and wallow in despair. You can do it, but if you do it for 20 minutes, it's 20 minutes of lost opportunity. That's what I always think about it. The longer you spend wallowing, the harder it's going to be to get out of the hole. Though there is that aspect.
mm, yeah.
What do you think?
Yes, no, I definitely do agree, and like I feel like for a lot of these things, you kind of need to go through it once and kind of put yourself in that uncomfortable position, and then you can look back and be like, oh, I can see how that was so much better for me. But again, coming from like, I feel like a lot of people just don't do that, and they don't like ever get to see the benefits of it. And then when someone is like, when you hear just something like this on a podcast, or you're talking to someone, I think the first thing that people go to in Ireland especially is, oh, I'm not that type of person, I'm like, I couldn't do
True.
that. And you kind of convince yourself that you're different, or that these people are built different to you, when you just
Mhm.
haven't been through it and seen the benefits once.
Yeah, and like that's why I hate like the term like can't. So one word that I always say is that like I'm never going to tell myself that I can't do something, like whatever it is, man, right? And it always goes back to like, I think the most, so let's say for instance, like I've recorded like 120 podcasts. I have never actually heard that word. Someone saying I can't do something on my podcast. Now these guys are not geniuses. A lot of them are very ordinary. They come from ordinary backgrounds, but because they took small chances, they end up in positions that they're in. Similar enough to coming out of a relationship saying, "Oh, I can never see myself being that happy," or trying to get out myself into a certain position. It's all about framing. It's perspective on that. So I think just eliminate that term you can't. Like I am like the ultimate sign of like someone who was like a dummy, and like my path could have been very, 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 very different. If say for instance, I took the blame for what happened to me with my injury and stuff like this, and said that, oh look, it's my fault, it's someone else's fault, whatever. But instead I took responsibility and took action afterwards, and that paved the way then for my life to be in such a way that I feel like I can have a go at a lot of stuff and be someone who is quite ambitious at things. Now, does that mean that I'm particularly good at it, or am I better than someone else? Absolutely not. But ultimately, a lot of these times, people are just take that chance, and
Mm,
there's not a lot of people out there who do take those chances. So whether it's your first post on the internet or bouncing back from a difficult relationship, there's of course a first step. Um, but it's all about situating yourself and seeing where you lie on that process, because you're gonna have to do it at some stage anyway. And
mm,
that's actually an interesting aspect in itself, because you know it comes a time whereby there'll be so much pent up like regret or anxiety that you'll be forced to make a change in your life. So that could come at 30s, 40s, 50s, and it could be quite drastic. And again, I applaud everyone who makes a change in their life, but sometimes you got to think about like, can you do that a little bit earlier? Like, did you have
mm,
to wait until 50 to realize that this company wasn't a good fit for you? Like, I saw something the other day of someone who spent like 30 years in a job that he hated, right? And then, you know, took some advice and started implementing it, and eventually was able to walk away from what he was doing previously. And in my head, I was like, that took you 30 years though. You know, did you really need to seek advice elsewhere to go and make an action? Like you should have surely been able to spot that in itself and make an assessment. Like at the end of the day, like we are adults. You know,
mm.
I always think about that. Like we are like adults. We think like when we're younger, like the adults have it figured out. Of course, they don't have it figured out, but they have to take some responsibility for what they're doing.
Yeah. Again, it's just something that I feel like once you kind of do it once, it
Yeah.
just become it like you need to just do it and break the cycle. That kind of like risk taking, I suppose. Like it does. I suppose it's kind of easy for us being on our side of it when coming up the way that we have come up with through businesses and stuff like that. You like there's been a lot of opportunities for us where we've had to jump in somewhere where we're uncomfortable, figure it out as we go along, and then like you come out of it and you realize like, okay, going back to what you said earlier on, like everyone has that imposter syndrome at some stage, and
Yeah.
I suppose we're very familiar with that it's okay to feel like that. But
Hmm.
for people who have never done it, who are going to grown up in these small towns or whatever, they might not see it like that, and it's a completely different perspective. And I suppose it's like, again, how we're raised and stuff like that, with you know as you were saying, kind of come away from everything, like say everything that's conventional and the way that it should be done. That's what is bet into people when you're growing up. Kind of go to college, get the safe job, like work the 9 to 5, like get the
Hmm.
mortgage, have the family and stuff like that.
The scam fallacy, man.
Mm,
No, I completely agree with you. Like, what I would just like to add on that as well is that, like, I think your current position that you're in should frustrate you. So when I grew up, very ordinary family. My mom worked in a hospital. She was like a healthcare assistant. My dad was like a van driver for like an exterminator company. It, very ordinary family. Didn't like struggle for money, but definitely like money was like tight, right? So I grew up thinking that money was difficult to get, right? And then it used to frustrate me how. Sorry, no. After a while, I grew up thinking that money was difficult to get. Then when I got to kind of university, I realized that the people who were in these jobs and these who had these businesses were often not that smart. To be perfectly honest, they were just people who took a bit of chance. So it used to frustrate me quite a lot how I was not in that position. So one of my goals really early on was that I wanted to become very financially stable, right? And I wanted to take on a financial responsibility and never worry about it. The way I say it is that I never wanted my future kid, which to be honest, actually, I don't even want children, but I never wanted like someone in my family to ever worry about money. That was my goal. That is my goal for 100%. That is my goal. So I just started getting really ambitious about that, and it used to frustrate me. And my current scenario used to piss me off so much. That's what I wanted to do. Now, all of the other stuff, the byproduct, happens as a result. Working hard, the consistency, the good roles, good network, the good lessons. But that was the North Star, was money.
mm,
100%. And that's the way it should be for a lot of people. Like, if you're broke and you feel like you're broke and it's holding you back in life, you should be solving that problem. So, 19, 20 years old, I had my first company at that time. I was fucking selling like e-commerce stuff online, and I was like putting everything I had into it because it solved my problem. Same with fitness and same with health. If I feel like that I'm a fat shit and I want to get healthy, you should be putting everything you have into it to get healthy. And it was a great barometer for me. And I remember just being like, I remember at an early age being like, oh, like 100K is what I want at like 30 years old. Man, I did that like 6 years earlier because I had that North Star and it pissed me off so much that that's what I wanted to do. And then, I set up these new targets and I have new goals for next year and I have a new roadmap that I want to achieve next year and stuff like this. And I was looking at it and I was like, this scares the shit out of me because it's so ambitious. But if I don't
mm,
do it, well, Jesus Christ, like as in if I don't sketch it out, then nothing's gonna happen. So long story short, how I determine this for people is that whatever current position, different everyone has different situations, right? But determine what it is you want to solve in terms of health, fitness, business, career, whatever, money, right? And then look at it then in terms of how do I actually get there? For me, from a training aspect, it was going with a coach, right? From a career aspect, you might find a good job or a good company. Let's say that's a whole different discussion. From a business aspect, you got to see where do I want to start. If I'm starting online coaching, right? How much do I need to make 10K a month? Let's break it down. I have 100 quid a client. I need 100 clients. Pretty simple, right? If I don't have that as a North Star, you're going to be pissing in the wind for the rest of your life. You're going to be in and out, whatever, whatever. But I have the North Star. It doesn't determine my happiness for sure, but that is a goal. Now, a plan without a goal is pointless, So take it from the best companies in the world. They all have targets. They all have uh, key performance indicators they want to get to because it determines success. That's the whole reason why they do it. It's not because they're making it up. So bring that into an anecdotal experience, your personal experience, and that's determine how you get yourself out of the hole you're in.
Yeah, very good. And one thing you mentioned earlier on was trading, which I kind of wanted to touch a little bit on. You got into
Mhm.
that because, like, I suppose for a lot of people now, it's such an easy way of kind of getting in and getting that second stream of income for some people, or first kind of dipping your toes into it. How did you get into trading? Because the last time we spoke about this, I actually took quite a lot from the conversation in terms of, like, say, trading and your opinion on materialism, which as well I'd like to touch on as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah, so a good point. Now, I wouldn't say trading is easy in any way, but
Mm,
again, it's a hanging fruit for people to get into. The reason people get into it is of course money. Like that's the reason why. For me, I was always interested in the aspect of technical analysis in terms of like short term indicators and just charts, right? So I work in a trading role to begin with, but I work on the building of trading platforms, not the actual trading element. So I was like, you know, it's kind of like being a football coach, but never actually playing football. So that's the way I kind of thought about it. I was like, I should just know how this is. So Simon Ree, one of the guys who was on my podcast plenty of times, he was 30 years and one of the biggest investment banks in the world, and he'd built out loads of courses, loads of programs around this. So I said to myself, okay, 98% of people lose money trading. It's very, very high probability, right? How can I set myself up for success? How can I make this a learning experience that benefits me in all different aspects of life? So I actually took his course, which was it's called the Tao of Trading. It's an options trading. So options trading is very different than traditional stocks, quite different. But it wasn't trading that I was interested in. It was the practice of learning how to do it. So again, 30 minutes a day, no matter what. Half of the course, man, is all about trading psychology. It's about patience, emotional stability, being able to control your emotions, being able to apply logic to it, to not think of this as a casino, to apply that kind of logical reasoning. So for me, of course, there's numbers on a screen that I really enjoy, but it's like, okay, how do I situate myself that I'm continuously learning? And the whole idea, you see people blowing up their accounts 24/7 and shit. I had never felt like that was going to happen to me because you apply a logic and a principle and you learn a strategy. And that's what I was trying to do was like learn a genuine strategy. And I think, you know, I was trading passively for years, but then I was investing how I determine it. But now it's continuous. So
mm,
and again, it's just something that I enjoy doing it. Like I don't think that this is going to be my full-time job. I much enjoy the world of podcasting and what I'm doing, but it's like, well, if I don't start now, then whatever. So the way I kind of saw it was like, you might have an account. Let's say we use round numbers. If I have a $10,000 account, and if I put on a 1% trade size, that is $100. Okay, so 1% is fuck all, right? And let's say you win. Let's say you win. Let's say you're up 20%. That means you've won 20. That means you're up $20. $20 means nothing. Okay, means fuck all. But compound interest, the compound of doing something difficult, soon enough your account will be 15K. 10% of that is 150, 20% of that has now been 30. It's slowly incrementally increasing. And that was my principle in terms of learning was that let's take this complex topic and let's see how it looks like for 3 years. Let's see what I look like over a 3 year basis. I'm going to look at year one, year two, year three. I hope to God it improves, tell you that much. But I also hope that I learn more about introspectively looking at how to solve problems and how to do it.
mm. Yeah,
What do you
very
think?
good. Like, this is all, like, it's still relatively new to me, I suppose. I kind of got into it at a bad time. I only started doing crypto in January this year, and then obviously April had the big crash. So I'm still kind of trying to get into it now, still trying to learn about it. But like, the way I went about it was just on YouTube, just kind of watching videos, like trying to kind of teach myself. And it takes a lot to get into it, but I think it's much easier to kind of understand the graphs than what a lot of people think from the outside looking in.
Mhm.
Um, Once you do just kind of start learning about it. And do you think that it's something that you would advise people to, like, just kind of start learning about and start getting into, or do you think it's something that, if you're kind of, if you feel like you're at risk of, say, kind of falling into something like that, to try and avoid it, or what would your perspective be on it?
Good question. Like everyone is different. I just think that basically it determines what you want out of something. Like I don't think doing something solely to try and make money straight away is a good idea. Like I just kind of have an enjoyment for financial markets always. So that was just
Mm,
my interest. So it felt weird that I had this interest but I wasn't pursuing it. That's when I kind of think of things. And it was for me how I know when I want to do something is I get like an itch. So
mm,
obviously I've been working and trading for so many years that I was like there was this kind of unquenched itch and I'm constantly doing it. Now again, I think that like there's a whole different world of risk management and how much money you could lose and all this kind of aspect that you need to understand, and that this stuff doesn't it's all roses and fucking ponies. Like there's a bit
mm.
more to it in life, you know. But there's a lot of other things you could also be doing. But I feel like that for anyone who's wanting to learn something, you should really just go learn a new skill, a new craft, whether this could be this, but it's about looking at where your skills lie. And now I'm actually not that very analytical, but it was just about the fact that I wanted to pursue something that I could stick my teeth into and go really deep on for a few years. So that's my kind of approach. Now, of course, I'm not going to give investment advice to the world, but
Of
I would
course.
think that how we should set it up is that if you're looking to learn something new, see where your skills lie, and then lean into that aspect.
Do you think it's something that people are going to be forced to have to get into in the future, the way everything's going now?
It's a good point. That is a good point, but you know, if you look at a standard deviation curve, right? Standard deviation.
Mm,
Majority of people will always be in the middle. Like that's
mm,
what standard deviation is. You take all the populace. You will have people that will look at where we are at the moment financially, economically, and think, "Oh fuck me, I want to take this into my own hands. What can I do?" That's the top percent. They will go off and they will learn this aspect, or they'll build a business, or they'll build a side hustle, or do something, or take a bit more initiative. That's where I think people should be. If it's in financial markets, so be it. More people in there, whatever. That's a good thing to a degree. Um, a lot of the platforms that are built these days allow for people to get easy access to markets. Comes with a caveat: you should definitely learn as much as possible, like 100%. Um, so I think it's more the initiative of building something out for yourself and owning something. Like you own this podcast. No one can take this from you. That's important to know.
mm,
Same with a skill. If you learn trading, for instance, that's a skill that you can take and 30 years, 40 years from now, you can still use it. So we need to detach the aspect of skill and monetary gain, because if we only think about monetary gain, we're going to forget about everything else. Like for my podcast, I didn't make money from it for the first like year, let's say, nothing. And then from there, then it's literally just like taken off, right? It's been able to like pretty much like live off it essentially. um so what I'm trying to say is that it's the acquisition of skills that got me there, which was learning to speak, selling my brand, the whole opinion behind it, the whole gesture behind it, as well as being able to write a lot, and being able to package it all together. So we should be in the search for skills in our 20s, not to search for money. The money is a
mm.
byproduct of the skills we gain.
Yeah, interesting. And do you think that, sorry to go kind of switch it up now, but there was something I kind of wanted to get your opinion on. Going back to say how you were when you were growing up and stuff. You know, you said you were from a very young age. You were quite, you started making money early and stuff like that. Did you ever fall down into like say the whole of the materialism?
Good point. Good point. Two aspects. So I was always very hungry and very like had a big desire for like to be successful, to make money online, to do all this kind of stuff, right? That was always what I wanted to do. But I was always pretty strong financially. Like I could make $100 stretch or €100 stretch in college for a month. Like genuinely, I would go down to Aldi, get like beans and rice, and I could make it stretch that much. So
Mm,
when I started to make money, it wasn't like I wanted to spend it.
mm,
So it wasn't like the money aspect that I wanted to do. For me, what kind of caught me when I was younger was, especially when I was single, was trying to be someone that I wasn't. Okay. And it happened a lot early in my career. Like I was like a consultant, right? Just garbage, whatever. And that's like a big thing in like Ireland. It's like a big thing, to be in like a big city and whatever. So I kind of fell into that fallacy, but I feel like it was very short term lived. I was never that guy to like swing like what I'd done as like an accomplishment to get somewhere to be like leveraged on people. I didn't really want that. And I feel like that the whole like kind of Balenciaga shit like just never really resonated with me because I could see through it. And I think even living in Singapore now, I see it even more because Singapore is very much old money. It's people who, had like factories in the 50s and 60s and they're
Mm.
extremely wealthy. Those people aren't the people that are spending 10K on a Prada bag and spending loads of bullshit, right? So they're like well ironed in beliefs. And my goal is not to make money to spend it. That's not the goal to do this. I think I just have a good lifestyle. So being in Singapore, like I live on the 30th floor downtown in an apartment that's like really beautifully designed. That's a good standard of living. And I don't
Mm.
need to like let's say have like a better t-shirt that costs like $2,000 to go down the street to someone who sees it. But I position myself like that. And for instance, like I just came back from Thailand, like Thailand is cheap, but I was living particularly well. I wasn't buying expensive dinners so people could see it. I was staying in a nice hotel because I wanted to sleep in a good bed, you know? So that's
Mm.
like the difference and the nuance. So money is a tool just like anything else, but it gives you access. So I'll give you a good example. So my gyms in Singapore are very expensive, but my gym in particular is very expensive. It's about $150 a month. It's pretty average here to be honest. But what I get for that is access to health and to improve my health, to detach from work and everything. Same with my podcast, my platform. Like this, my platform is quite expensive to run because we have a
Mm.
production team. Like that gives me access to network, to lets me grow my life and whatever. I don't spend the money on bullshit stuff, right? I spend the money on stuff that ultimately helps me to improve my life, improve my standard of living, uh, and then also help what I do in the online space.
What about from like a networking point of view? Do you feel like they're, say, for example, like watches and cars, things like that? Do you feel like they have kind of a place in, say, the business world? Say you might see this a little bit more than what I would.
Man, I gotta tell you a funny story. So yes and no. So I would consider myself as like a proper like hustler. That's how I describe myself as that. I don't give a shit like who the person is. I'll ring them. I'll text
Mm.
them. I'll give them an email. I don't give a fuck who you are, right? And because of that, I found myself just meeting some like awesome people. These people have invited me to literal banquets. Man, I've been in like some crazy scenarios, especially in Singapore, right? And I can't like say too much on it, but basically like I've been on like 80th-story buildings with some of the richest people like in Singapore, and sitting with these people wearing a shirt that's $20 from H&M. Like the shirt didn't get me there; it's the individual that who I am to meet people that got me there. And I've been in like private boys clubs, essentially like the equivalent of like these private clubs that you pay to get into every year. And I've sat with people who are multimillionaires, me at a tiny, tiny, tiny 0.001% factor of this are sitting with these individuals. It's not because of my watch. My watch is a Casio watch that's like $30 off Amazon. And my shirt is a vintage shirt that I found in a box like 6 years ago. And that's what's very interesting is that we think that all the other stuff will elevate our status. But trust me, it gets rooted out. And I'll give you a good example. So I was sitting on the table before and I genuinely think that okay, so I was on like an 80th floor of a building in Singapore. The people that are around me on the table probably had a combined net worth of 100 million easily, easily. There was a chandelier above me that was about 20 million. Okay, we were sitting there chatting just about life, business, careers, whatever, and I was thinking that it wasn't like again what I was wearing that had me there. We had a conversation for like 2.5 hours. Nobody gave a shit. It was all about the individual. So the
Mm.
individual got that person to that position. These people are much older than me, so that's kind of why they're at that status. Like they're quite old. And I always think back on that is that that's what's got me relatively where I am at the moment, and that's what will get me to go to the next stage. Um, I do think that like money can be completely like abused, and especially like cars and watches and all that kind of shit. And like at the end of the day, like does the girl even care? Like you know what I mean? Does the girl care that you're getting with, or does the guy care? Not really. I think that if you have extreme disposable income, sure. sure, whatever. Like, but if I wanted to get a 911, which I'd love to do, I want to get a 911 because I want to drive it. I think it'd be sick. It'd be an awesome experience, and I'd love to drive it. There's loads of Porsches in Singapore, and I was like, that's something that I'd love to drive. Do I drive it so someone else sees it? No. Do I care though? Do I really, really care? No. Is it a sick car? Yes. Is it really good from an engineering perspective? Yes. So people justify things in different way, don't they? What do
Yeah.
you think?
Uh, I I heard a point on a podcast there the other day. It was with Mike Thurston and James Smith, and they were talking about this, and they were saying like it invokes curiosity in terms of, say, if two of us are standing there and we don't know each other, and I see that you have a Rolex on your wrist, and I go over and like I'd be interested in finding out like how you made your money to get that Rolex. Do you get me? And do you get what I'm trying to say? That for
Yeah.
or if I was driving around, if I was driving around town in I don't know what, like a nice car, do you know what I mean? And people know I'm an online coach. People be like, oh, he's obviously doing well. You know, it would invoke curiosity in to getting involved or to finding out what I do.
True. True. Um, to a degree, yes. But I feel like if you are in some places, like even like Dubai, like this is not my experience, but like I haven't even been there, but I've heard other people say that like a lot of it is like fake, like
Mm,
literally like the buildings are fake, like jewelry is fake or whatever, and like the cars are like rented. So like even when I was in Asia, like I would have met these people who were perceived to be wealthy, and they would have been seen to be wealthy, but I can often see through it. Like if I speak to someone, I have a pretty strong head mentally, and I, to be honest, like I have a good understanding of like a business model and how something makes money. If I do meet someone, which I have, and I think in particular, and I'm like, oh, like what do you do online? They're like, oh, like I'm like a online coach or like whatever. You can clearly see through it that like this guy isn't a multi millionaire. You
mm,
can kind of see through it. So I do get it. Do I think that's a determinant of success? No. With the online space, I can determine a lot more by someone by online. Like I actually
mm.
genuinely can. Like you can see by someone's business or how they write or how much traffic they have. There's other factors that we can determine this, but of course you're saying first impressions. On a first impressions basis, yeah, possibly. But I also think about it, let's say from a female perspective, if I saw a girl who was wearing 2,500 Louboutins, I don't know that I think that she's super successful. Like what do you
Mm.
think?
Yeah, it is a weird one. Like as I said, there's so much like fake stuff going around nowadays. But I can see kind of both sides of it. I like to a certain degree. Now, again,
Mm,
what a very good point you made there is like it's different in a place like Singapore or Dubai as opposed to being in Ireland. You know what I mean?
mm,
If you're surrounded by a lot of people who are in it, it wouldn't stand out as much. Whereas if you're in Ireland, like it could be a little bit different. Do you think that something you mentioned there a lot would be kind of like you said it a few times to like impress a woman or whatever? Do you think that's what it is for a lot of people? Is just to
definitely.
again feed into their insecurity?
100%, like as in like you can be like an actual baller like Andrew Tate, who's like genuine baller, like he like has shitload of money, shitload of supercars, has a private jet, guy's like shredded, like pretty secure in himself. So yeah, like makes sense for him. But that's probably not going to work for everybody else. Like not everybody's like an Andrew Tate, so
Mm,
getting like the watch or getting like a car is not going to like solve that problem. And like girls don't even like, if you think about it, like what girl do you want to get with that is only impressed by if you have a Ferrari or a Porsche? I don't want to get with a girl that has, I will only get with me because I have a Porsche. Does that
yeah.
make sense? And I suppose that's where like, if it's in Miami or whatever, that's the shit that's actually happening, which is like a bad barometer of like how you find a partner. We went back to earlier is like what makes a good partner is someone who shares a lot of values of you and wants to be that person. But again, it's all about what you want to put out. Like if you're trying to put out to a girl that you are this mega successful guy and you're putting that on, you're equally going to get someone who is putting it on or genuinely just wants someone who has a Ferrari. So that's a fucking recipe for disaster, isn't it? Just going to go
Mm.
down a horrific path. And I often think that like the girl paradigm is very interesting as well, because like the people who like mega successful guys or guys that want to be successful, whatever, and are faking it. What type of girl are they looking for then? Is it a girl who's super successful? Probably not, because a successful girl will not want to rely on just a dude. Does that make sense?
Mm.
She has her own sense of security, whatever. So you're probably projecting this view for someone who's reliant on you, who's probably broke. Genuinely. Like a lot of these girls are like
Mm.
probably broke. So now they're in the whole sphere of fake jewelry, fake heels, or not even fake heels. They could have used daddy's money or OnlyFans' money to get heels so that they'd put themselves in this position. And then what you're left with is a dude somewhere in the Mediterranean on a rented boat with girls who are also broke, and that dude's also broke. So like that's a fucking recipe for disaster, man. You know, it's not grounded in proper values like at all. Like it's not, there's no substance behind it, is how I put it.
Mm. Yeah, no, very good point. Yeah, brilliant, Darren. I think I'm gonna wrap it up there. We've been covered some good points there. Happy with it. Do you want
Appreciate
to
it, man.
plug your socials and everything before we head off?
Of course, so main platform is LinkedIn. So you'd find me, Darren Lee, on LinkedIn. My podcast, Kickoff Sessions, is on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, all the good stuff. And then my I suppose my online platform is Podcast University, which you can find on podcastuniversity.co. That's everything, man. Thank you so much for your help.
Brilliant.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks very